Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Getting Unstuck with Misfits Unplugged. We are helping highly motivated hustlers achieve success and overcome career hurdles. We're two minority women with a combination of street smarts and corporate America, bringing simplified business concepts to everyone.
And if you are feeling stuck in your career and just don't have a plan or don't quite know how to pivot to the next step, or you haven't reached the milestones that you're really looking for in your career, then you want to stick around and listen to Misfits Unplugged, because we're going to be giving you little nuggets on the way to just kind of help you on your journey.
So I'm Izzy, and that's Brandy. Say hi, Brandy.
Hey, y'all.
And today's episode, we are going to focus on defining career milestones. We're going to go over and share a little bit of ours. We're going to define what it means for you and help you with defining yours for the future. So Brandy, did you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So let's start off by first giving a little bit of a definition of what milestone is in the dictionary, and then we'll define it on our own individually, right? So the Webster Dictionary states that a milestone is a stone set up beside a road to mark the distance in miles to a particular place. It's an action or event making a significant change or stage in development. So that's the book version. I'll break down what I think like a milestone is as it relates to your actual career. And I like to think of them as like little keys to the next step in what you define as success in your career, whatever that is, right? So for some people, a milestone, to make it easy, could be a degree or a certificate or whatever. And we can use that because we know that there was some study, there was some grit, there was something that you had to put in it to actually get something out of it, whether that be the knowledge or the next stage and being able to apply to the kind of jobs that you want. That's a very simplified version. But I think as we talk about career milestones, we have to start out with thinking about like what success means for us, because that kind of determines what's important to you, right? So if you're an entrepreneur, then maybe your first milestone is getting the first client that really, really fits what your business offers. I mean, that's a huge milestone, right? For me, I think in my career, I've had several milestones, and if I could just pick one, it would probably be getting promoted when I wasn't even thinking about getting promoted, right? So I've been with a job, basically the assistant to an assistant of the CEO for probably about a year or so. And I was still going through my associate's degree, very green, was happy that I had even gotten past the first year, was like, okay, I know how to do this school thing, right? And somewhere in there, leadership saw leadership in me. And so they gave me the opportunity to step up in directorship, which sort of set the tone for the rest of my career, because then it was kind of, every milestone after that for me, in terms of how I identify success, was getting leadership roles, projects, things of that nature that would allow me to unlock the next key in my career, which eventually would have been executiveship. So how do you define milestones in your career?
Yeah, so as you were speaking, I was thinking about, you reflect back 10 years ago versus what I would look at it as now. So for me, a career milestone, 10 years ago, I would have thought they were big changes, like you mentioned, a promotion, a salary increase. But now where I am in my career in leadership, I want to reflect back at career milestones and look at them also, not just as the promotions and the increase in my salary, but also skill sets that I acquired that I thought were helping me move the needle on where I wanted to go in my career. So when we are thinking and talking through career milestones, I want our listeners to think about if they're acquiring a new skill set that is helping them on their path to whatever their next step is. So for me, if my next step is being successful in Misfits Unplugged and, really growing this out, then it's all these steps that I'm learning in between about entrepreneurship that I'm like, this is a milestone. We learned how to podcast, I feel like all those skills that I'm learning and, becoming it, I wouldn't say an expert, but mastering them enough to do a good job to move the needle. I think that for me is a career milestone as well, because the bigger ones, you see them, the length between, promotions, sometimes it's a long time. And then you start, what have I done lately mentality, right? So setting yourself up in between, just like if you were losing weight, and instead of saying I'm going to lose 100 pounds, which sounds so far away, putting it like I want to lose to 5, I want to lose to 10, and just having those bite-sized successes for me are also career milestones. So that's why in our last episodes we talked about those goal settings, and it really is so you can reflect back to see how much that you've accomplished.
Sure.
So from a career milestone, and what I feel has been, because you mentioned when you got promoted, so it made me reflect back on my first, I want to say, milestone promotion from, I went from support staff to a management director role. So the seat wasn't even like cold yet from the girl that had given her resignation. And they were like, all right, Isabel, you're getting promoted to, director. And I changed my title in my signature so quickly. And I was like, Mom, I made it. You would think, right? Now, we reflect back and we're like, that wasn't that, but that was a successful moment for me. And I feel like that change from where I was headed in my career, I was jumping around like a typical millennial, just didn't really know where I was going, just trying to, try something new, get more money in my paycheck. And when I got promoted in that was really kind of like the first step in building my management and leadership. So that was one of those moments. And then maybe less than a year later, you joined and I started working with you. And then there was a lot of milestones in between there, again, about skill building, learning when and when not to speak up. And then about in my current role as well.
Yeah.
I think in that moment, that was definitely one of my defining career paths, career milestones, because it made me see the value that others also see in me versus just coming in and doing a job, clocking in, clocking out. I was really now investing my time and, in building myself up so I can continue on that path. And I kept seeking that career milestone energy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I did it. I kept going after it. So for me, that's how I would define the milestone. And that was my most pivotal moment.
I think you hit on something really interesting too, because I like the idea of the small wins. The small wins always lead up to the big win if we're consistent, right? So when we're talking to our listeners who are trying to figure out, what should my next milestone be? What do you think is maybe a good step in them starting to kind of identify their own milestones, and how should they use them in their career pathing going forward?
Well, I think it's sit down and whatever is your best time to think and be clear. So Brandy, you might be a morning person. Well, you're not a morning person, neither am I. So
definitely not a morning person, people.
But
you see, like she checked that quickly, right?
That 10 to 11, like right after your coffee, you settle in, is a good thinking time. And then for me, at the end of the day, probably right before bed, is like all these ideas and things are coming up. So I would say find, number one, the time that you are the best at being creative and you have no distractions, because we all have a lot of things going on. And I would sit down and reflect back to where you started in your career and kind of work your way up, work through chronological order, go through, this was a great moment. I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember I didn't know how to do that. Like I remember my first job and I needed help. I didn't have a clue how to use the fax machine. That was a milestone in that for me. And now I'm teaching other people how to do it.
They do, yeah.
So, so I look at things like that. When did I acquire a skill set and I became from trainee to trainer? That would be number one. Number two, writing everything down. And then looking forward to where you want to go. We talk about reverse engineering our careers. I know we're going to dedicate a whole podcast to that.
Yeah.
But look forward to where you want to go and kind of reverse engineer it back and say, okay, my next step is, we talk about entrepreneurship and where we're trying to take Misfits Unplugged. And it would say, okay, Brandy and I are planners, so we already have it out. But without the plan, what are we working towards? So I would say, number one, find your quiet time. Two, look back, write down what you did and how you achieved it so you were successful. Use whatever tools you use to accomplish it in the next steps. And number three, in trying to kind of, achieve your next steps. Make them bite-sized, make them realistic. It is okay to make huge career milestones for yourself, but also make those little in between so that you can pat yourself on the back and fuel. If you're not fueling the tank, you're going to run out of gas. So make sure
Yeah.
you're fueling yourself with positive motivation, patting yourself on the back, if it's a success or even if you make a failure. So even a failure is a learning opportunity, and that's a success in my book.
For sure. I mean, the only thing I would add to that is, and I talked a little bit about it when we first opened this up, is defining success for you, right? Even if it is 10 or 15 years out. I mean, none of us have a crystal ball. A lot of times we have, all of these plans and they don't necessarily turn out the way that we expect them to. But I think just sort of getting clear, like Isabel said, and sort of defining what success means for you over the next year or 2 years or 5 years, however far out you can think, and then really start thinking about what's really in your way of getting to where you want to be within that period of time, right? And so that goes sort of back to our ABCDs guide, which is the reflective guide that's foundational in helping you, yes, look at your assets and all the things that you bring to the table, but also your blind spots. Like, what do you need to develop in order for you to get to the next level, and make that your milestone, whatever that is, and set little milestones within the milestone so that you don't get discouraged on your way. And then a third thing I would say is mentorship. I mean, we obviously want to be your accountability partners and mentors as much as we can, but we are obviously not in everybody's industry. So we can talk from a very broad perspective in terms of how all of these tools help for us. But I think getting an accountability partner who is superly excited for you, who has your best interest at heart, who wants to see you win. I'm not talking about, the friends who can't really see your vision. Those aren't really the people that you want to, invest a whole lot of your dream into, but, somebody who really, really cares about what your next level of success is for you and however you defined it, and somebody that's going to cheer you on, because that to me also allows for you to kind of, hit the milestones quicker and faster. And with that gas that Isabel was just talking about, that juice that we all need in order to get to the bigger milestones later.
Everyone has experienced it when you achieve something, that like energy and electricity that runs through your body that feels so great and it motivates you. Like, you imagine that feeling on day one of a new job or starting something new, that energy.
Yeah.
Energy 100 days later, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, how do you keep bringing yourself back to the day one energy?
And I'd also say that juice, that electrifying feeling that Isabel is talking about, particularly when you hit a milestone, whether it's a small win or a big win, usually comes because you've put so much focus and so much of your energy into it that even reaching it at all feels so good. Like, and if you can get into the habit of just reaching little small milestones on your way, then, you get those little small juices until the big juice kind of like takes you.
Really thirsty.
Yes.
So what I hear you saying is self-reflection and self-awareness. Like we talk about the ABCDs until we're red in the face, but it really truly is the foundation to everything. Self-reflection, self-awareness, understanding where we were, where we currently are, and where we want to be. Without understanding that clearly, then you don't have a clear path. You're doing all these efforts, and that's when you take on too much and you're like, oh, I want to do this. Oh, you know what? I'm going to start this and I'm not going to finish it because now I want to do this. Everyone has started that, right?
Yeah.
Change the degree. You start a role, you hate the role, So look back is really, really important. So go on to Misfits Unplugged, download the ABCDs guide for Getting Unstuck. We want you to start there. If you're new to our podcast, please start there. That is the foundation for our entire mindset and framework to everything that we're building. It's making sure that you pat yourself on the back for everything that you've done, all of your assets, but also being true to yourself, like Brandy mentioned, and being honest. You're not good at everything. There's things that you have to work on, and those are your blind spots. Then there's your choices, which are where are you going in your career? What opportunities are out there for you? And then last but not least is your destroyers. What is your roadblocks? What's holding you back, which a lot of times is yourself. Mentality is a lot of the roadblocks that we see or hear from our listeners. And of course, before we move on, make sure that you are subscribing to this podcast. You're like, you're engaging with us. With all the content we're creating is because of the engagement that we're receiving. So
yeah,
ABCDs for Getting Unstuck, start there. That's the self-reflection process. You're brainstorming to be honest with yourself. And then today's episode, we're talking about looking forward, your self-awareness. So BK, if you were talking to someone that was looking for our consultation now, and they were like, I don't even know how to begin, what would you tell them?
I think it essentially goes back, and Isabella and I are very alike, but we do have two different methods, I think, of getting where we want to go, which is sort of the beauty in this, because it's complementary. But I'll keep reiterating that it'll be easier for you to hit a target if you can figure out or define what success is for you. So it sounds like a really easy question, but it's not when you really start asking yourself, right? Because a lot of times we bog down with what we think other people's expectations of us are. So, is it your mom the one that wants you to go and get that degree in psychology? Is it your, dad who wants you to go and get that scholarship somewhere or do whatever? Has it been your, friend's lifelong dream for you to go and, build a big company or whatever that is? I think getting really, really clear about what success means for you holistically, because it's going to be hard for you to set up realistic goals if you're not setting them around who you truly are from the get-go, right? So I would say the first step to anything is figuring out what it is that you want to do, because once you have a hard target, you could set up an infrastructure for success around you. And then the next step I would say is keep listening to us or DM us if you have specific questions about where you are on your particular journey, because it's not a straight line for everybody, right? What I would advise one to do might not be the same thing that I would advise another. So it just really depends on where you are. But I think you're headed in the right direction if you can see where it is that you want to go and what you want to be, because then it's easy to sort of build an infrastructure around you for success.
Yeah, I agree with that. So for me, when I'm doing career planning at different stages, I'm looking out and saying, okay, where do I want to be? So I know where I want to be from a financial standpoint. Now, also, what type of lifestyle are you trying to live? There's so many different types of lifestyles, and one is not better than the other. We're all individuals. So it's saying, okay, this is what I want for me, my family, and here's where I want, my flexibility. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to work from anywhere. I don't want to necessarily be tied down. And then it's kind of saying, okay, here's my interests. Or if you're already in a career path, if you're already established in an industry, now you have to marry the two. Where do you want to be versus where you are? And are you number one, are you in the right industry? So once you do this,
that's a whole podcast in of itself.
The next podcast is talking about pivoting in your career. So if you're not in the right career, but you have good skill sets, then we're going to actually talk about that in the next podcast.
Yeah.
So, I would kind of link the two. So I have insurance services and financial planning and financial services industry and entrepreneurship. I have been in this industry for a really long time, watching entrepreneurs and how they have to work and learning, all these skill sets. Now I want something long-term. So it's like, okay, what do I need to do in between? I'm talking with my hands a lot. Down now. It's because I'm excited about that. It's really cool.
That's fine. That's great. That's your passion. We both talk with our hands, by the way.
I am pretty passionate about that. I want everyone to live their best life. Not the 9 to 5 and the paycheck to paycheck life. You should feel, especially where we are in 2022, you should feel happy going to work. You should be fulfilled in your role. It's not going to come to you though. No one is going to give you the perfect job in your hand and say, here you go, here's 6 figures. You're going to get 2 months of vacation. You can work from anywhere in the world. It's not going to happen. It could happen.
Yeah.
Find it. Let me know. But you have to work for it and you have to plan for it and make sure that you're doing everything that you can strategically to get what you want in life. Before you know it, time is rolling quicker than ever, especially after COVID. We saw how fast last 3 years have really so make sure you're planning, you're writing it down. So everything Brandy and I are saying, even though it's different, is exactly the same. Reflect back, write down what you're trying to accomplish, what lifestyle you're trying to live, how do you have to achieve it, or what do you have to do to achieve it? So skill sets, where do you need to go next? Sometimes you do need to pivot. When do you need to pivot again is the topic for our next conversation. But sometimes staying in the same employer won't give you the quickest turnaround than pivoting to I'm saying carriers.
Yeah.
Insurance.
Such insurance nerds.
Different companies. I've moved around to such different companies, and I became a leader in my early 30s. You and I both, we were in leadership early on in our 30s, but it was the different opportunity that came to us. I jumped around. You had, more rewarding opportunities, but again, that was about the relationships you built. So that's a whole other discussion that we can spend time talking about.
Identifying opportunities. That's a whole other.
But so is there anything, Brandy, that you wanted to add about career planning? You wanted to make sure, if you hear nothing else, this is what I want you to take away. Grab a pen and paper and write this down.
So I would say, like, there's no way to it but through it, right? Milestones, a reward for some level of focus or concentration or grit that you put into it, which is why it's opening up for you. So I'd say there's no way to it but through it. Write it down. Every step usually has a bunch of small steps under it. Don't get overwhelmed by the big picture. Start, one step at a time.
So thanks for listening to today's episode where we define career milestones, where we shared our personal milestones, define what we personally believe milestones to be and how you can achieve them. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share us. Remember, we are not your dirty little secret. Can be, but we want to be a part of your community. Share us for anyone who needs help with overcoming hurdles or they feel like they've reached plateaus in their career. We are creating all the resources to help you. We are obviously energized to help you. So where can you find us? Go on to misfitsunplugged.com, sign up for our newsletter, and make sure you sign up for the ABCDs guide. We're getting unstuck. We are also on Instagram, same name, Misfits Unplugged, and we're dropping knowledge bombs on a daily basis. So let's stay connected and build this community of misfits. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.